moon stuff. Well, maybe not.
Okay, we
Kind
had a
of.
little bit of an audio issue, so we're going to ask you to start again, Nori. So sorry.
Really?
Yes, blame it on me.
When? Now?
Start over now. Just let her rip. Sorry, folks.
Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we have fun bringing you cutting edge conversations while exploring the quantum possibilities. And we're Broadcast Team Alpha. I'm here with Aage Nost and Tom Schaefer. Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
So before we get started talking about the moon tonight, I'd just like to invite you to connect with us. You can connect with us on broadcastteamalpha.com, and we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, please, Broadcast Team Alpha. And you may notice if you're in YouTube with us that there's a new function. It's called a super chat. And if you'd like to support us that way, we are very grateful. And if not, we're just grateful that you're here. And even our haters, we're grateful that our haters are here because we're Broadcast Team Alpha and we're all inclusive. So, hey guys.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay, are we having audio
No, we're
difficulties?
up.
We're
We're
good?
good. We're good.
You
Okay.
good?
All right. So who's going to talk about the? I mean, we that video that we put out, right? The moon pictures is like really taking wings. It's taking flight. There's been more than 3,000 views on it. It's just a short, I don't know, what is it, 20 minutes, Augie? Not even?
Yeah, 17 minutes. That's all it is.
Yeah, video of really cool stuff on the moon. And since it was so popular, we just thought that we'd talk about the moon tonight. So who wants to lead up the conversation? Augie, Tom?
Go, Augie, go. Go.
Okay, well, I'll just blame it on me. That's good. I tell you, this moon is there's so many strange things about it, and there are scientists that it says that it is easier to explain why the moon is not there than it is being there. So what I'm finding is that when I started looking into this, dates back a long time. When I did my research for the book about spiritual science and higher conscious thinking, then I found some writings coming out of India, some 9,000 years ago, where it said that we had two moons. One was blue, and the other one was the one we see now. So the blue one is not there anymore. Where did it go? If we count on the writings in India, then where did it go? This is a real question because there is some records of it having been there.
Hmm.
Maybe they're just spaceships and they were flown here and parked in orbit for a purpose of maybe observing the planet and then just take off again. And if you look at the moon that we have, it is in a totally impossible orbit. There were there was a scientist at NASA that said that for that moon to have the orbit that it has, being perfectly circular, that was one in several million possibility that it could happen. So that kind of lead me to think that maybe it was flown into orbit and parked in
So
orbit.
you're saying the moon is a spaceship.
I absolutely am saying that.
Hmm.
And I'm not alone on saying that because there is, Isaac Asimov. He's an American author and professor of biochemistry at Boston University, and he wrote a statement, and he said, "I'm going to read this to you because this is such an incredible guy make this statement that is, yeah, incredible. I guess the word is." He says, "We cannot help but come to the conclusion that our moon, by right, ought not to be there. The fact that it is one of the strokes of luck almost too good to accept. Small planets such as Earth, with weak gravitational fields, might well lack satellites. in general, then, when a planet does not have satellites, those satellites, if they are there, they are much smaller than the moon that we have here. Therefore, even if Earth has a satellite, there would be very reason to suspect that it may be artificial.
Hmm. Then,
So,
okay, but then what about all of all of the landing on the moon and the rover, and so how do you explain that?
well, it's obviously there. So we have all the pictures of things, artifacts, and buildings and pyramids and stuff up there. It is there. There's no argument about that. And there is no argument about that we have been, and I say we, mankind, Americans and Russians and now Chinese and several other countries are going there in the future. We've been there. But if you look at the science behind what's going on in going there, we didn't go there in 1969 in that tin can. They went there in the mid 1950s with the craft that they got a hold of from the Nazi German scientists after the war, and they redesigned that and back engineered it. Actually, they found a complete one that they just had to figure out how to fly it, so that was pretty simple. But that, we know they got those Haunebu 2s, and I think they also had a Haunebu 1. So they had the technology to go there because the magnetic field around that Haunebu 1 and 2 are such that the radiation from the sun would not cook them. But in the spaceship that NASA sent to the moon, in 1969, they tell us, they couldn't make it through the Van Allen belt. It's almost like some of you out there have forgotten something when you put something in the microwave and you found that you left a spoon in there. You know what happened then. That is exactly what would happen inside that spacecraft going to the moon in 1969. So that's why I'm saying.
Well, they had radiation shielding.
No, they didn't. They did not. No.
Sounds pretty emphatic.
Yep. I have
Okay.
researched that one very well.
Well, it is interesting all the different things that have been, all these different elements to the moon that does seem as if it was placed there, and that, interestingly enough, the tidal forces have helped to spawn a lot of the sea life, and there is theory that leads towards the fact that without the moon, that maybe the evolutionary processes in nature would not have gone the way they had, or as in whatever directions they've gone, but that the moon has had a huge effect on these biological evolution of different species, or growth, or the way they cycle, the tides, the way they affect sea life, the way they affect migrations and egg-laying patterns of turtles, et cetera, is all dictated by tidal forces. And so it is interesting that there is this very precise alignment of the moon and its placement, which does lead to some of these theories that say it could have been placed there. I've done some reading on some of this stuff. Now, I'm going to put a slide up of an artist's depiction of what some call this hollow moon theory. Now, I went out and did a little research on the hollow moon theory, and there are competing arguments that have vociferous and emphatic feelings about this.
Vociferous.
Vociferous means a very
Mr.
vocal.
Dictionary's here.
I don't know. I just heard it somewhere on TV.
I like it.
But anyway, so there are people that believe emphatically. Now, there's others that don't believe that the surface could withstand the gravitational forces to build something like that. It's like, well, what if it's an advanced civilization that could? Who's to say there isn't? I won't say there isn't, but until we have proof there is, it's still just a theory. However, there are also people that say that the mass of the moon, based on the mathematics in its orbits, its placement, and its tidal effects and its gravitational forces, a lot of these mathematical stats do not line up with a completely hollow moon. That's not to say that there isn't cavernous regions or lava tubes or something like that. Maybe there's some giant cavernous areas that maybe the big giant maybe. What if an alien race used one of those cavernous spaces to put their control facility in? Unlike this image, which shows a perfectly spherical, some kind of a space station inside of the moon. It maybe is nothing that size at all. Maybe it's just a little cavernous area a couple of miles across, and they've got some sort of method of alien technology that can move it around. Who knows? Maybe there is a big engine in there. We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, just to back up a little bit, Margaret asked if it is a spaceship, like Augie's saying. Augie, who put it there?
Well, I think her guess is as good as mine. There are probably some 20 to 50 different races up there, according to some people. And when we look at the moon, though, you mentioned, Tom, and you are exactly right in what you're saying here, because it really shouldn't be at the distance. We know how big the moon is. We know the weight of it. We know how big Earth is. We know the weight of it. We know the gravitational forces put out by Earth and the gravitational forces put out by the moon, which is very little. And we know the speed that is going around Earth. Sorry, flat earthers. It is going around the Earth.
Sorry,
and,
not sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're not.
That creates centrifugal force, which we balanced by the gravitational forces.
Oh, there's definitely a ballet going on. There's a huge ballet going on that just seems to be larger than chance.
Yeah, and the thing is that the moon is way too big and way too heavy to hold this close an orbit. But if it was much lighter, being hollow, it would make perfect sense being in that orbit that it is. If it was solid, it would be approximately 3 times further away than it is right now, and going slower around Earth if it was solid. And you run those numbers through the computer, and there's NASA has done that, but they don't talk about it. But the other people, in fact, I got a friend in Nebraska who teaches physics up there. He ran it through there, and he says, "Okay," he says, "the moon isn't there."
It's not there.
Yeah.
It was just a
Of course
projection.
it is, but he was joking.
Oh,
But
okay.
according to the numbers that came out of the computer, it wasn't there.
All right. Well, I just want to say shout out to everybody in the chat room. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Margaret. Hi, Val. Hello, Electric Crystals. Really nice of you guys to be here with us. And there was a little dialogue here. Well, it's not a dialogue. Margaret said that she heard a story that the moon rang like a bell when it was hit with a missile. And she heard that the moon was also older than the Earth. So Augie, both of you guys, what do you guys think about that?
It's funny that that question just came up because I literally found that exact same question, Margaret. I'm going to paste the link here into. There's that exact question on Quora. So there you'll see a big discussion going on. People raising all these questions we're talking about tonight, having this discussion about whether the moon is hollow or not, or whether and what these impact tests were that they crashed the lunar landers after takeoff. They crashed that ascent stage into the on several of those flights into the moon for a seismic reading. Now, if you look at what's being said, a lot of it makes sense that maybe it's not hollow, but that the size of it and everything else, there was a seismic reaction. And some people don't feel that it was enough, even though there was a sustained echo through the ground, that it wasn't necessarily proving that it was hollow. Because they said the density of the Earth, you still get, even on impacts at the Earth, there is a kind of a decay to the sound. That doesn't mean the Earth is hollow either. It just means there's a decay to the sound as it rumbles through the rocks and the crust. So it's hard to use that. It's a bit of a leap, let's just say it that way. It's a bit of a leap to say that the seismic impact proved that it was hollow. It proved that they got seismic waves. But people have said, well, this proves it. It doesn't necessarily prove it. It doesn't disprove it, but it doesn't necessarily prove it either.
Augie, what do you think?
Well, I think that, see, any theory can be twisted around to serve its own purpose, and we don't really know because most of us hasn't been there. But I think that when they sent that spaceship down, it hit the surface of the moon and created an impact equivalent to a ton of TNT. That's explosives, powerful explosives. And the moon rang for 6 hours like a bell. So there were sound waves uh, going back and forth through the planet. So the thing is that physics says that if it was solid, it wouldn't do that because the inside would act as a damper. If the church bell was solid, it wouldn't ring either.
Right.
So we should draw some connections here, and there is caverns inside it according to science. So I'm leaning on that one very heavy.
Hmm.
Well, I'm a quantum possibility believer, so it's quite possible. I will say it's possible. Is it plausible? You can lean in that direction, and is it provable? We won't really know whether it's true or false. So I think the jury is out to the individual to take and do quote do the research, find out what you want, and find out. A lot of the stuff that's out there, you've really got to look at the math, and this is the thing we've kind of strayed away from as a species. We've taken a big cynical eye towards science because science has let us down in several areas, but it hasn't all been bad. So to just dismiss, throw the baby out with the bathwater, as some people want to do, there's good science and there's science that ends at the theory that says it's a theory. But it leads you in a direction that says, okay, I kind of lean that direction. So
There's actually scientific evidence for the fact that the moon is not, the theory that it was expelled from Earth and later on became the moon. Well, that doesn't fly because when the rocks came back from the moon, and we do have moon rocks, they show that the rocks coming from the moon is about 500 million years older than any kind of rock on Earth. In other words, it doesn't come from Earth. In fact, it wasn't even formed in the same cloud of dust as Earth was. And those are facts. So then where does it come from? It's obviously come from outside of our solar system, or possibly outside of our galaxy. I don't know, or interdimensional. There is so many possibilities here if we start thinking of quantum. And here is Irvin Shapiro. He is a Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He says the best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon does not exist. And the moon is bigger than it should be. He also says that. Apparently older than it should be and much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that it should not exist.
Well, Margaret says that yes, the moon rocks are older than the Earth. So how do we explain that? You guys have any
Well,
further?
I don't have any problem with the theory that the moon may have been towed into position. In
Interesting.
fact, in fact, there is the law of one lore that talks about how the moon was an escape satellite. It was a satellite used to escape a failing planet. So maybe that's possible. And it is interesting because a lot of these weird anomalies that we've been talking about and what we showed in the moon pictures, this is not just this rock floating around our planet. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with this entire body that's floating around us. Just an amazing amount of weird stuff. So you really want to cling to science where it matters and say, okay, wait a minute, but what about this? This doesn't make any sense. You know what Augie's bringing up and what we've looked at with the moon pictures, some of this stuff just does not add up. So I am willing to accept some of these theories as plausible. It's not entirely implausible,
Of
if that's
course.
the word.
So I just want to say thank you to Margaret Parker for a
Oh,
$2
yeah.
super chat. Thank you so much. That was so kind of you. Yay. Yay. So, well, we could talk about some of the pictures. I don't know if everybody has seen the moon photos, the moon pictures video. It's on our Facebook page. It's on our website. It's on YouTube. It all leads to YouTube, right? All roads lead to YouTube. Um, And there are some really interesting pictures on there. Like there are pyramids on the moon, or there appears to be pyramids on the moon.
I want to mention something too about the Soviet Academy of Sciences. There was Mikhail Vasin, Alexander Sher, something or other. I don't speak Russian. He says, because of the activity and observation of the moon is a creation of an alien intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there is another one here. They talk about the fact that in those rock and the dust coming back from moon, they find things that should not be there because they found brass. And brass is an alloy. It does not exist in nature. Someone or something had to combine metals to end up with brass. They have also some radioactive material and plutonium-235, and I think I forget what, I'm scrolling down there to find what other radioactive material. The two different radioactive material up there that is not in nature, they have to be created. So that's why we have more questions than there probably ever will be answered when it comes to the moon, because really it didn't come from here.
Then how do you? I mean, how do we begin to explain the phases of the moon? What's all that about? Then? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it like, oh, let's really make them think there's a moon and it's got a cycle and it's going to be full, and then what would that all be for?
Well, if you
Yeah,
believe, if you believe in the, if you accept that there could have been terraforming done on this planet for a specific reason that was reinterpreted by ancient legends as mankind being placed here, et cetera, throughout various ancient texts and scriptures and et cetera, through a lot of these different ancient aliens theories, ancient astronaut theories. Okay, so if you can accept that, then it's quite possible that an advanced species put the body here, and they knew how that would work. That maybe they did it in other star systems. They said, yeah, we got to get a moon. We need the tidal. We need the tidal function. We need all of that. And maybe that was set in motion that way. What we think are gods that may have done this, or maybe just advanced ETs that understand all this stuff. They go, yeah, we're just terraforming another one out here in the long arm of this galaxy. We've got it all cranked up. We got a couple million years to work with it, try to get it lined up. And so maybe they put it in place.
I don't know, Augie. What do you think? I mean,
well,
it's a good theory, yeah.
I have on my computer somewhere, I have a short video that shows on the moon's surface. And this was, the video was obtained from NASA. Somebody got it under the Freedom of Information Act, and there was a larger picture, and they start blowing it up, and they found this little thing. That is actually, it's a surface with a little pipe coming out of the ground. And they saw a very short video, probably about 4 or 5 seconds, of smoke coming out of that pipe. And that tells me something is on the inside, burning something, because it looked like smoke.
Campfire,
Yeah,
marshmallows, what?
yeah, that's probably it.
It could be. I just saw an article recently. They were talking about flashes from the moon, and so there was some explanations in the media about what these flashes were. That it could be gases venting, could be something subterranean that's venting gas, causing a puff. So there's that possibility as well, and it could well be, like you say, maybe there's an underground structure of some kind where there's somebody doing something that vented something. That's quite possible.
Yeah. And here's another one, Dr. Harald Urey. He got the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. He said that I am terribly puzzled by the rocks from the moon, and in particular of their titanium content. Titanium is also an alloy. It does not exist in nature. It has to be created. but there's titanium all over the moon in the
Interesting.
dust.
Well,
Well,
the whole Corey Good narrative was that, from what he saw on there, was that this was a lot of wreckage from big battles that took place, and the wreckage
Yeah.
was left there as a testament against war. That was his claim.
hmm.
Well, there could be something to that.
Well, Nancy said, this is good. Nancy said that the Pleiadians are supposed to have built the moon originally, then lost it after the solar system was invaded by the reptilians and the Anunnaki. What do you think about that?
Great stories. I mean,
Yeah.
I have read so many great stories. I love all the stories I read in Law of One. I love all of Corey Good stories. I love all these stories. They're great lore, and until we get full disclosure and we actually hear from some out and out ETs that can show us, maybe through whatever their technology is, that they can give us something besides our own speculation, that would be
Wow.
nice to know.
Yeah. So Philip Quinn, thank you, Philip. You're so kind. Said for everybody to catch Augie's interview on Veritas Radio that it was really good, and it was. It was amazing. And when you were talking about smoke coming out of the moon, Val said smoking souls factor or something, and Electric Crystal said that they also heard. Whoops, where'd it go? They also heard that the moon was made to reincarnate souls back into the Earth.
I've heard this one also.
How does that
Yeah.
work? What's the mechanics of that?
Well, I'm struggling with that one because moon is physical, earth is physical, a spirit or a soul is not physical.
I tend to agree with you on that one.
You have to go through the moon for that.
Yeah, there's so much to think about.
Yeah.
I think that's even how we started the video, right? There's so many wonders out there, and this is definitely something to wonder about. But it takes all of the romance out of the moon. I mean, like when I was driving back from California, it was a full moon on my birthday, and it was right in my. It was amazing. Takes all the romance out of it. Val said, Bruce sees all. You guys should invite him sometime to the show. He's amazing. So, Bruce sees all. I don't know who that is. You guys familiar?
Well, I guess if you want to send us some information, Val, that would be
Yeah,
great. Like if you want to send a link to a channel or something, we can
yeah,
definitely take a look at it. We're open to a lot of suggestions, so that'd be great if you can send us some details. It'd be wonderful.
absolutely. So,
Mhm.
so Augie, what pictures in the video like really stood out to you, or are your favorite? Or
Well, the first one, that is where you have a 2 mile long cigar shaped spacecraft floating across the surface of the moon, throwing a shadow on the ground. And
yeah,
I know that one is real. I got it from NASA myself. I have actually somewhere in my files, I have the original print that I got from NASA. The one that is posted in there is a photo from that. So it's not the photo of the original, but I have the original. And there's several others of those pictures that I have the original for also. And some of the others I've got from other researchers and found them on the internet and backtracked them to the people that found it, and I found it to be credible. And
mm,
the thing about it is that when I say credible, we got to remember that anytime people at NASA open their mouth, there may be a question of the truth to what they're saying. But for right now, when I backtrack those pictures, and that's why I chose those, there's a lot more, but I didn't put all of them in there because I had questions about them.
mm,
So
But
we,
that's I think you're absolutely right. Is that it's I know people want to say in the kind of the truther community that just NASA's a big liar. It may be that they have obstructed a few things and have hidden some things, but that doesn't mean that everything they've done is fake and that everything they've done is a lie. They've done quite a bit of science, and a lot of it is quite provable, and there's quite a lot of evidence to show that. So I wouldn't toss the baby out with the bathwater. Its
yeah,
problem is we just got all this stuff that's been shielded from us, the secrecy, the levels of secrecy. It's really damaged our society in so many ways because people are out running around with theories that have even less basis in fact than it's just really gotten out of hand. It's
Well, there's a lot to think about, and some days, when we talk about things or we read things or we talk with people and they introduce new stuff, some days I'm just like, I got to shut it off, because there's just so many possibilities. But if the quantum realm really works the way it works, it is what we believe it is. Philip Crow said, oh, excuse me, Philip Quinn said Crow 777 would be a good guest for us. And the feed is going so quickly. Um,
So we're getting a little pushback on the on NASA, which I understand,
it's okay.
and that's okay
But
because it's okay to question these authorities that have kind of ruled the narrative. That's okay. I think that's really good. But there is also good science that's come out of it. There are a lot of people involved that are good scientists and have actually brought real science to the fore. So the problem is that the leadership at the top has not given us all the answers or all of
okay,
the science.
okay,
So
that's
that's
real. I'm so hearing what you're saying. But let's open this can of worms, since there was in the photos of the moon. There's a swastika shaped. What was that, building or lights or something? And Nancy said that NASA is a Nazi organization to start with. So I don't know. You guys have a lot of information about that. You want to?
well, it would make sense that if as Agi had mentioned earlier, that if the Nazis had succeeded with their technology and the Hanabus made it to the moon, it's quite conceivable they may have built a base there. It's entirely plausible. So who are we to say they didn't? And this picture it raises a huge question. It raises a very huge question. So
Yeah.
And
So
in fact,
Augie,
I
what was
want,
that picture? Was it a building that was shaped like a swastika, or was it a lighted building, or?
well, there's a NASA print there showing the building that it's almost a mile wide, and it is formed as a swastika, very clearly as a swastika. But we got to remember, a swastika, what is that? It's a religious symbol. It wasn't something that Hitler invented. He found it in the Far East. He found it in his research looking for artifacts, and he fell in love with it. And he used it, actually, he reversed it, and that's probably why it didn't come out as well, because the energy that came from the old swastika had the other twist to it. Hitler reversed it. But on the other hand, is that when the Germans came up there, they found that building and they fell in love with it. So they started rebuilding it.
Wow.
And there are people in they're dead now, but they talked about this and they wrote about it back in Europe after the war. They're saying that they went to the moon with a Haunebu 3 and they found this building and they started rebuilding it because. And I love your comment on the video, Nori, when you said, is there air on the moon?
Mm.
Yes, it is, because it is equivalent to about 16 to maybe 20,000 feet on Earth. And we can actually live there. We can breathe there. We have to breathe a little deeper and a little faster, because there are people in the Himalayas right now that live every day of their life at 16,000 feet. And they are fine. They just get adapted to it. They breathe deeper and they get the same amount of oxygen to sustain the body.
Mm.
The same thing
Augie,
would happen for us on the moon. We would just have to breathe a little deeper. And I have a NASA print showing a very thin layer of something across the horizon of the moon. So there is something out there, and that is air.
Augie, earlier, a few minutes ago, you mentioned something about some stories that people had related in Europe about this Nazi base on the moon. Do you have any, if possible, maybe we can throw something into the channel, or maybe sometime later we can put it in the comments. Any links or anything to that? I'd be curious to read.
Oh, there is actually, when I grew up, I remember probably at the age of about 10 or so, there were several newspaper articles in Norway where they talked about the flying discs that the Germans made. They had some drawings of them, and there were even talk about the fact that they didn't have wings because they were counteracting gravity. And that's basically all I remember of it. But they talked about them, and I know the newspapers where when I go back there, I'm going to go seek out some of these things and see if I can find it. The problem is that it's written in Norwegian, so not everybody will be able to read it. But maybe they could be translated.
I think that'd
But
be great reading. Yeah.
So
yeah, these things existed.
sorry. Nancy said that her favorite picture on the moon pictures is the one of the tall gray walking on the surface. That is a great picture.
Yeah.
That is a great picture.
And there's another one just like that when there's a person standing there. It kind of looked like in heavy clothing, but no spacesuit.
Yeah.
And for those of you that didn't watch the whole video, you really lost out. You got to go back and run through 17 minutes because there's stuff at the end of it that'll blow your head right off your shoulders.
Well,
not quite like that.
Not quite. Yeah.
Now, Val brought up the John Lear. Now, I've heard the John Lear story about, and I think maybe Nancy brought it up earlier too, about how the souls were being recycled. I heard this from John Lear too, an interview he did a couple years ago. I've heard this. He also talked about Bigfoot being there. Some of this stuff, his stories, some of them are also very phantasmagorical, and you just got to take them whether you want them, like them or not. You just take them for what they are, and maybe it resonates with you. I don't know, but some of it is, quote, a bit out there. But then again, it's just a lot of weird stuff going on with the moon, so take it for what it is.
And here is the...
Val said that, I love that the moon picture where there's smoking bright blue spot, like something, like some kind of mining area or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something going on there. I mean, I just, I still don't want to let go of the romantic part of the moon, but I cannot, possibly say that it's just the moon now, because there's just too much to think about.
Well, the thing that bugs me about these pictures is that we've had to suffer with these grainy pictures is all they would release. They don't give us the good ones. That's the really tough part about this. So some of this stuff has been interpreted with more questions. Maybe once we see the clearer images, maybe a lot of these questions will be answered. But for the time being, this is all we got to work with.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get the clear pictures because in that one photograph that Aage had, it showed where NASA had smeared it, had smudged it, so you could not see the clarity of what was behind it. Yeah.
There's that woman that testified. Dr. Greer had her testify with her witness testimony. She worked for Warner von Braun and testified about the NASA altering many of these pictures and scrubbing out or blurring out or copying and pasting over where you can actually see an obvious, quote, earlier version of Photoshop. And I know how that was done because I worked in photography, and you would lay, basically literally cutting and pasting and then rephotographing.
Really?
And so by the time you rephotograph it, it loses even more detail.
Right.
So we get these crappy images that they say, oh, here's your image. And then you're left with even more questions. So until we get more transparency from the and quote disclosure about that very process that they denied us, NASA's having to backtrack now. Now all of a sudden they've decided to release higher quality versions of the moon landing footage because they know their reputation's on the line about all this stuff because they did not release quality data to the public. They kept a lot of this under wraps. I think didn't they even lose some of the footage was lost? So they've not been good stewards of this data. So
I don't know. I mean, so the picture, I'm having like this vision of NASA, like a bunch of people sitting around eating donuts, like kind of, all lazed out, right? Right. Oh yeah, we'll do a little smudge. And now with disclosure happening and more people coming to the forefront, it's like everybody, like hairpins are flying out and they're, scattering around like to cover stuff or find stuff and just like,
well,
oh my God, wait.
You know what's great is now there are these commercial missions going to the moon. It's going to be a lot harder for them to hide things. It's going to be a lot harder. We have the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the LRO, which I actually used that footage as the background in the video. So that Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is now, I don't think they're going to be able to hide stuff much longer. And maybe that's the reason why, and we talked last week about how ufology is going mainstream. All of a sudden now we got Tom DeLonge with another new push towards his disclosure efforts, whatever that means, with these ex-government agents who are in his bevy of validators of information. Now they're putting their little anointing on that information. And maybe it's because they know with the LRO up there and all these commercial missions going to the moon, it's going to come out. They're no longer are we going to be struggling with fuzzy photos. We're going to see some things that have been mocked, ridiculed, and marginalized for the last 30, 40 years.
What's the LRO? What is that?
The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter.
Okay.
It's literally shooting pictures that if we could get those pictures, we'd have definitive proof of those very same objects that we showed in our video. We'd have definitive. It wouldn't be fuzzy photos. It wouldn't be, well, maybe, well, you're pareidolia. That's just pareidolia. You're just seeing what you want to see. Well, wait a minute now. These shapes and objects don't line up with natural formations.
Right. So Nancy said, Margaret said that her cousin, I won't say his name, protect the innocent, works at NASA, and he got an award for making a part to repair a shuttle, but he won't tell anything. I know people in the alphabet soup that don't talk. You're right. Yeah.
I served in the Navy. I know that even when you're in the same room with people, they will get on a secure phone between each other. And you won't know. When I was in the Navy in the control room on the submarine, this is back in the Cold War, the captain would be on a secure phone to the sonar room, which was 20 feet away. He said, secure phone, and they would talk, and he'd go,
that's
okay.
So interesting.
Boom.
So that's
because
why
they didn't want us. They didn't want us, the lower-ranking people. So a lot of this stuff, when you hear Greer talk about compartmentalization, unauthorized USAPs, where you have to be read into these projects, these unacknowledged secret access projects. Okay, they compartmentalize stuff to the point that the receptionist really doesn't know what they do down the hall. Nobody really knows other than what you're going on in your cubicle, and if you reveal it, you will be dealt with either prison time or a bullet. So this compartmentalization at the point of a gun is why all this stuff's been kept secret.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're good at it.
And they're very good at it.
Wow. Nancy said that the Japanese took the original Apollo mission photos and still have the negatives, that Bob Dean, rest in peace, had them in one of his seminars. Interesting. And Nancy also said that she thinks that Virgin Atlantic space venture was blown out of the sky on the final test flight, killing his best pilot. Boy, I'm so out of the loop on that. That really happened?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know enough about it either.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting, though. Really interesting. And so somebody said that Bigfoot's on the moon.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. That story that John Lear relates to about Bigfoot. If you go to the Law of One, they literally ask the ET hive mind, so what's the story on Bigfoot? And the ETs say in the Law of One that this was a race, it was an evolution of humanity, or an evolution of a bipedal creature that had not yet advanced to where we are. And that they were also part of this movement from Mars of souls that incarnated here on Earth. That's what they say in the Law of One. So that's the thing where this whole Bigfoot on the moon and Bigfoot coming from Mars, that's where a lot of that comes from, is from the Law of One and some of these other related stories.
Maybe we can get some Mars pictures and do a video.
Yep.
What do you guys think? In fact, I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, we'll do that next.
Have we got any more questions from the chat room here?
The chat room's really having good conversation. Val said, and we have a Space Force. I think everything is coming out step by step. So, yeah, I totally agreed with that.
Might be forced to explain away the SSP to explain the secret space program.
There's another guy too that works at NASA, or worked at NASA. Ken Johnson he was the supervisor of the data and photo control department during the Apollo missions. He said the moon did not only ring as a bell, but the surface wobbled in such a precise way that it almost looked like it had hydraulic damper struts inside, dampening the oscillations. And he also said that the moon rocks have been found to contain processed metals, including brass, mica, and the elements of uranium-236 and neptunium-237, which has never been found to occur naturally in nature.
There you go.
Well, you mentioned Mars, and I think one of the biggest anomalies they found in recent years was this signature of X-ray radiation in the atmosphere that can only be put there through some sort of a nuclear reaction.
Yeah.
So there are anomalies, and I don't know if there's any of that kind of detection on the moon, but there's these anomalies that don't make any sense, and so we're not getting the full picture.
We know that. We totally know that.
Yeah, no
But
way. Yeah.
what was that? My notes went away from yesterday. What was that Goldilocks thing?
Oh,
Was
Oh,
that
the Goldilocks zone. Yeah,
yeah? What
that
was that?
that is the distance from the sun that people or life as we know it can exist. That in that Goldilocks zone is a little bit kind of almost inside of Earth and also out, including the orbit of Mars. So Mars actually is in the Goldilocks zone barely. It's a little
right. Well,
chilly.
it came from the old fairy tale the about it's the soup being too hot, too cold. I like it just in the middle, the Goldilocks zone. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just right, not too close, not too hot, not too far away where it's too cold. So it's right in the middle. That's where the whole
Mm.
Goldilocks thing came from. So
Yeah.
So interesting. So interesting.
Oh, you
Mark,
brought up. You
I'm,
brought up. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go.
Oh, you brought up Mars here, and I'm going to take about 35 seconds to talk about that a little bit because that's coming up. Assembling the pictures on something similar for Mars, and in those pictures you will see humans, not necessarily even humanoids, but humans standing around on the surface of Mars. And these are NASA prints. And they came because NASA has released a lot of the gigapan pictures. They just had to. And they don't even know what's in it. And when people start blowing up sections and blowing them up and blowing them up, then they find things in it. And they see people, they see skeletons laying around, they see all kinds of stuff there. And this is going to be interesting when we find some of those
Hmm.
things.
there's also a certain amount of pareidolia going on with what's on Mars, and it's some of this is. I see those pictures and I go, okay, well, I'm okay. I guess you could say that, but like for example, there was a picture that seemed to show what looked like some sort of a big spacecraft type roving vehicle, and it's like, well, maybe, or it could be just the fact again that we have these fuzzy pictures. We're not getting the quality images again, and I think the more people would put pressure on these space organizations to give us the real images, the real access to the real data, so we can, like for example, the big face on Mars, the big those structures,
Yeah.
that stuff. It's all been kept from us as well.
So Margaret asked, "Do you think that the Greys are on the moon?"
They're
Seems
on the
plausible.
moon.
They
Yeah,
are. They
they're
look
there.
it. Look like that picture looks like it. Nancy said, there's a regression case of a man that was allegedly a Martian reptilian, and he stated that some of the Mexican hieroglyphs are based on Martian and Egyptian are influenced by Anunnaki. Yeah, I think Billy Carson said something similar to that, didn't
Yep.
Speaking of which, we recently got in touch with Billy, and we're going to be having him back on real soon.
he? Hey.
So yeah, that's going to be happening here.
Yeah,
He's a difficult guy to nail down because he's constantly traveling and in motion, but we're going to be connecting with him real soon.
he's
So
so busy.
yeah,
So busy.
he's got so many. He's kind of an Indiana Jones because he's actually not just doing writing, but he actually visits the places that he writes about. So really looking forward to getting an update from him on what he's doing. So it's
Yeah.
going to be good.
You know, tonight would be a great night if we could have like call-ins because the chat room is so meaningful. Nancy
Well,
said that Linda Moulton Howe said that her Spartan whistleblowers say that there are hieroglyphics in Antarctica of both Mesoamerican and Egyptian influence. So yeah, it's all starting to leak out, right? I love this.
yeah,
What a great time to be on Earth.
there's some fantastic stories coming out of Antarctica. I just really would I'd love to know more. I've heard so many rumors about things, but again, we don't have reliable data.
Well, I mean, technically, we really do know. I mean, there's a part of, you know, our consciousness that really, 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 really does know. but it just, we need to open up to that.
Yeah.
Because we really do know it's all in there, just like the guy who was regressed. It's really in there. And I think sometimes when we get that sense of, like, your gut feeling aligns with something that you just thought of that's completely new, I think that's like the little confirmations along the path.
Yeah, and then there was the two places where I saw this picture. One of them was a museum in South Africa, and also the Smithsonian. They released a photo of a human skeleton that was found in Antarctica. And the only oddball thing about it is that it was that long, about 1 foot long, but it was a perfect human skeleton. Facial features or skeleton features like us. And there was just actually 11.5 inch long if you stretched it out.
So what do you make of that, Aage?
Well,
I don't even know what to think
it
of.
was there millions of years ago, but because it was found in rock. So humans have been around for a long time. Also on my Facebook page, I have a picture of some people walking through their backyard, and they heard this fluttering sound up in a tree. So they put the camera up there, and there was this little fairies that was about long. To perfect human, really long legs, but there was a human with wings on it that just took off.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess
We have more questions than we have
so many
answers.
questions. So many questions.
Miles to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a great show. We've had some great questions from the chat room.
As always, the chat room's awesome.
We may not have given you any more answers than what we've got, but hopefully we've entertained you and given you a little bit of food to think about, food for thought. Great questions too by the chat room.
Really good. Thank you for the super chat. And Phil, thank you too. If you are not PayPal friendly and you do want to support us, just email us and we can send you an address. So thank you so much for everybody. It's really a different aspect of our broadcast team Alpha. It's just expanding, just like we all are together, right? And when we ask questions, it just opens up the greater possibilities.
I think Margaret had a follow-up there too. She was wanting to know if that skeleton you're talking about, Aage, is that the same one that Greer was talking about, or is that a different one?
I don't know what he was talking about.
Well, Greer did his whole documentary about the Atacama.
No.
The little Atacama. Yeah.
Atacama is northern Chile.
Okay, and the one you were talking about?
That was Antarctica.
Antarctica. Okay, and that was found in rock.
In rock, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully that may have helped you.
It's on my website. You can go to the website, and at the easier website to get to actually is www.aage-nost.com, and go to the picture section, picture gallery, and well, you got to search a little bit. I forget where it is because there's 5,000 weird and strange and unbelievable pictures there.
Okay.
But you'll find it.
Very cool. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody in the chat room. And a conversation like this would be great to have call-ins, because there's
absolutely, yeah,
new stuff coming up here. So I just want to address Nancy's comment. The best story is on the Maria mummy. She was pregnant when she died. The local mafia got hold of the remains. She's been warehoused.
Okay, that's in reference to the Nazca mummies down in Peru. Remember the ones that they showed on Gaia? Yeah, and those were basically, I think, on loan from the guy that smuggled them out of whatever underground. There's some sort of underground caverns that these things were in, or underground recesses, or something in the mountains that they were buried in. That they were, I don't know, these caves with a lot of that diatomaceous earth that helped preserve them. So. Yeah. And then there was a whole thing on another UFO channel that talked about how the entire thing was an entire hoax. This guy was making these little mummies in a factory. They had a little assembly place where they were making them. But it doesn't all add up. I'm not sure what to believe about the whole thing, but I know what she's talking about. The Maria mummy. If something was just a little bit unusual, some of the pieces fit together that showed that these quite well could have been what they really were. That they weren't just that wasn't just a hoax, but there was enough evidence there to show they were all real. So again, I don't know.
Yeah, they found that cave, and that cave have hundreds and hundreds of these mummies in it. Basically, what they did, they found their graveyard, and there are so many of them in there. There is no chance of all them being fakes. It cannot happen.
This may have been an attempt to kind of suppress public dialogue about it. That it's a big hoax. Just go move along, people. Just another big hoax.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the case. That's what's left everybody with so many doubts. Is that so much of this stuff has been unreasonably marginalized by disinfo agents. They've put so much out there. There's just so much mud in the water. It's difficult to understand sometimes what's real and what's not. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Tom, why don't you take us out? Since you're on a roll.
Alrighty.
All right.
Roll. A roll. I'm on a roll. Okay. Thanks everybody for stopping by. We appreciate every one of you. Be sure to subscribe, like us on Facebook. If you got questions or suggestions, and Nancy, it looks like we're going to have to put you in as our fourth co-host here pretty soon. But we've loved having you all here. Margaret, Nancy, Val, all of you guys, Philip, all of you guys. Wonderful to have you here. And we will see you next week with a brand new show. We've got, just so you have a heads up, end of the month, we're going to have a continuation with Dan Willis and Dr. J. We're going to bring them back. They're going to be back for a second half on the ufology and the mainstream that we started talking about, or it may evolve into something else, but we're going to have them back. And so stay tuned, and we will see you. Where's the out music? Here we go. We will see. We will see you next week with a brand new show.
Absolutely.